Like all native people, where they lived and how they lived were basic factors in determining the type of dwellings they chose. Tribes that farmed as well as hunted built sturdy, permanent structures out of native materials. Adobe pueblos in the southwest, earthen lodges on the plains, and wooden structures in the forest. The hunting and gathering tribes needed simpler housing. The best known of these are the large nomadic tribes of the plains, the buffalo hunters. They lived in teepees and used their horses to help move these dwellings as they followed the bison herds. Because the sheep-eaters followed the bighorn sheep herds on which they depended, they had to be able to travel lightly over rough terrain. Horses were of no use in this rugged alpine habitat. They relied on Mother Nature for shelter, food, and water. Since the sheep-eaters were unable to carry their shelters with them, these dwellings were by necessity simple structures which could be quickly abandoned and easily refurbished when they again came through an area. Like other mountain tribes, the sheep-eaters built thatched huts. In open meadows, they would construct wooden pole teepees out of deadfall timber.
Actually, all of the mountain tribes used them, but they were the only abode, the only kind of house that the sheep-eaters had, except for their cave houses, you know. But if they built a structure out in the open, the sheep-eaters would build one of these, called a Wickiup, or a conical timber lodge.
This lodge was discovered by Bob Edgar of Cody, Wyoming.
It looks like an old gray ghost in the timber with this green moss on it. Really one of the best lodges I've found.
These shelters are found along the migratory routes of the bighorn sheep.
Pretty much the sheep-eaters were where the sheep were.
There were lots of mountain sheep here.
Yeah.
Even in Mummy Cave, that was about 85–90% mountain sheep usage for over 9,000 years.
They've been hunting sheep in these mountains a long time, haven't they?
Several factors seem to have contributed to the location of this lodge.
Over here about 100 yards, you see all this whole country as far as you can see.
You'll often find that they're in places where you have good vantage, good view of what's going on around you. They want to be tucked into the glens and they want to know who's around them.
Look up at the top of this cliff, there's a circle right through the cliff of light that comes down. And this is right in line with that hole.
This unique geological structure may have spiritual significance, or perhaps it just served as a guidepost. Whichever is the case, it seems to have played a part in the location of this dwelling.
In my experience, the few crypt log structures that I have seen have been pentagonal or hexagonal, and this one is square. However, it sure looks prehistoric or proto-historic to me. There are no saw-cut logs. It's an enigmatic structure, is what it is. There's certainly no historic evidence around here. It's a real good candidate for excavation.
This Wickiup looks to me to be non-Shoshone, and I can explain the reasons why I think that. The ones that I've seen that are sheep-eater, the ones in the high mountains that we've identified as being Shoshone or sheep-eater Shoshone, they made them with a lot of small poles, like more than 100 small poles. And this particular one has somewhere less 48, 47 poles in it, so it's got half the number of poles of what a typical sheep-eater one would be. I would argue that this one is probably Crow. This is well-known Crow Indian territory, mountain Crow territory. And so there's no reason to suspect that this is not a mountain Crow Wickiup. All of the tribes in the West made these temporary wooden structures, and the setting that we're in right here would suggest to me that this one is related to hunting. The sheep-eater Shoshone did not have teepees. They lived only in these Wickiups, and they made them more permanent, and they made them with more poles, and they made them better than this particular kind that we're seeing right here.
Behind me is a Wickiup structure, probably used and built by the mountain Shoshone or the sheep-eater, that has collapsed recently. When I first saw this 12 years ago, it was intact and upright, much taller. It was maybe 8 feet inside, and now the large pine tree that it was leaning up against is toppled over, and the Wickiup has collapsed somewhat, it's still in pretty good shape for a structure that's 300 years old or so.